Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the TAO-Living Podcast, The Art of Living, with your host, Luke Corleto. And today, I'm super excited as I have a dynamic duo as my special guests. First, let me introduce Dr. Michael Ryce, who is the founder and director of Heartland, a self-healing center in the Ozark Mountains. He is a world-renowned lecturer and teacher on health and healing, with doctorates in naturopathic medicine and in holistic philosophy. The focus of his studies has combined body-mind principles, physics, and ancient Aramaic studies into a unique body of pioneering work in the fields of self-healing, healing through relationships, anger and grief resolution, world peace, and the inner process of forgiveness. His unique synthesis of information and tools is acclaimed as a powerful blend of spiritual principles and intellectual clarity guided by the heart. His book, Why Is This Happening to Me Again?, is an international bestseller. His partner in life, Jeannie Ryce, having a degree in psychology and 30 years of teaching experience, is a knowledgeable practitioner in the fields of creative spiritual direction, self-healing, healing through relationships, anger and grief resolution, stress management, identifying purpose, and especially the inner process of forgiveness. Jeannie, with her uncanny intuitive ability, knows how to touch people where it hurts, and then with expert guidance, support the healing of issues hidden, perhaps for lifetimes. So ladies and gentlemen, help me and welcome Dr. Michael and Jeannie Ryce. So ladies and gentlemen, I am blessed to have these two beautiful souls join me. We were just talking before we went live about the last time we saw each other in person. And at least my mind does, plays trick. It was like, yeah, it wasn't that long ago. It's only been a decade.
5 years, maybe.
Yeah, right. So time frames are all, it's all perception anyways. So when I reached out to, they responded instantly and said, yeah. So I'm grateful to have them here so they can unpack their wisdom to enlighten me. Yes, selfish. And as the listening audience, you get to play with this as well. Yeah. Wow. Michael and Jeannie, really, thank you for being here. And it's, I just can't believe it's been that long. And the physicality.
Honored to be here, and excited, looking forward to see how our wisdom interacts, because we're here to learn too. So let's go for it.
Right. So the fundamental part of your work is forgiveness, and let's start there.
Okay.
From the whole dimensional aspects of that. Like when I grew up, and as you encounter, and most of the people that when you first start working with, I'm gathering, still run that paradigm of when I go to forgive, it's outside, right? Mm-hmm. I'm forgiving something outside of me.
Right.
And so if you would, let's unpack that from the paradigm that most people run. I'm forgiving something outside of me, people, places, things, or events, to then eventually internal, and then to the next levels that you guys have masterfully unpacked from the Aramaic tradition. So,
well, as you say that, several decades ago, I've been working with first century Aramaic forgiveness, a la the Aramaic language, directly from the teachings of Yeshua 2,000 years ago. And somebody came up with the name for me, the forgiveness doctrine. And I oftentimes shock people by saying, please stop forgiving people. Never forgive anybody ever again, or you're in trouble. Because if you think that somebody outside of you is the cause of what's moving inside of you, you're in denial, and you'll create a totally unnatural condition within yourself of unconsciousness. Because to tell my mind that the problem is out there, you made me mad, you made me sad, you made me afraid, you hurt me, that upset me, they disturbed me, means that the upset and disturbance that is moving in me, that can only come from within me, I have to hide from myself. I literally create a veil, a barrier over it, and I make up a whole construct called perception, where I build a world, literally a world, the one that I think I see with my eyes. I build it with my mind, and I build a picture of how that out there is the problem. And then, of course, the Greeks come along and say, well, just forgive them. It's all their fault anyway, but be good, be big about it. Never forgive anybody, but forgive continuously. In other words, understand that forgiveness is nothing to do with letting them off the hook for what's happening inside of you. We've been conned. I mean, the whole world has been conned into letting them off the hook is going to change what's happening inside of me. And if I arrange for 7.5 billion people to walk past my door and I shake their hands and I say, I forgive you, I forgive you, I've done nothing to change what's happening inside of me. In the first century Aramaic language, you'd never be invited to forgive someone else. You'd be handed a tool with which you go inside yourself. You open what was in the ancient teachings was called the veil of the temple, which is the barrier between the unconscious and the subconscious. The temple is your structure, and you find what's in there that's creating the disturbance, and you access it directly and remove it rather than putting it into your brain's image with somebody else and pretending everybody else is the problem. One of my favorite tongue-in-cheek lines is, you'll notice if you've been through it 87 different times with 42 different people, you're the only one that was there every time. It's about you. It's not about them. But we can create this hallucination called perception, where we literally see this hologram. The brain generates, the mind generates a hologram, a world that's so detailed. Gee, pictures on the wall and, shelves and lights. And it's nothing but a hologram produced by the mind. There's no life in it, but that's where most people live.
Mm.
You've got to collapse that sucker. And forgiveness is about collapsing that false world of perception and opening to the truth of who we are, accessing what's hidden, bringing it forward in the presence of active love, and dissolving it. There's where the forgiveness happens. When the root source, which oftentimes is multi-generational, of our pain and trauma are constructs that are based in pain, those constructs, when brought forward directly instead of projected into our constructs about others, when that content's brought forward directly in the presence of love, it dissolves. And there's where forgiveness happens. So it's the removal of what doesn't belong in us, not letting somebody else off the hook because it's firing in us again. I did listen to your introductory video the other day, and I kind of had to smile when, as you were describing, and I haven't been privy to what you've been doing to your body for the last few years, but it sounds like it's been pretty intense. And your question was, why is this happening to me again? And, I feel blessed the universe reserved that title for my book, that when I wrote it 30 years ago, when I started looking, nobody had written a book by that title, so it was mine. And the fact that we're creators and create out of an unconscious part of ourselves is where the problem is. And forgiveness is about accessing the unconscious part through which we create over and over and over again the things we don't want to face, accessing them directly and removing them from the structure, thereby changing our creative process. Gene, does that fit? Is that any thoughts to add to that?
Well, so before Gene, I just wanted to share with the listening audience, I'm going to hit, so we're going to stop in this and come back for part 2 next time, because ladies and gentlemen, what Michael just laid out succinctly in 5 minutes, it's been a lifetime of work between these two beautiful people. What was just shared in a stream of consciousness, literally, please stop. Well, I won't project. I'll need to stop and re-listen to that, because the refinement of the the wisdom that's laid out in that last 5 minutes, the depth and breadth of what's there, period. That alone is a massive game changer. So don't just listen over that and keep going. Listen over that, let it penetrate, and then listen again and feel where you feel it. And so again, sorry, Gene, for you to add the wisdom to that. I remember hearing years ago when I first met Michael, I remember hearing this one piece connected to this around forgiveness and relationship. Isn't it funny that the other people are the problem? Then how come I'm the one with the pain?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Sorry. So Gene, please expand, add, play, go somewhere else.
No, it's fine. And Michael covered it very well in 5 minutes. It has been a process. We are still working on ourselves. When we present, this is how you do it. And everybody's like, well, how do you get there? How do you do that? And it's like, we still get triggered, and we still have to, do the forgiveness work, and we're still working on ourselves. and moving forward and learning every day. So, it's just a process.
And it's
That
a
it is,
lifetime
right?
process. Lifetime.
Right.
Yeah.
Mastery is a process, not an event, right?
Right.
Yeah. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I believe the video Michael's referring to was me sharing part of my story of my taking full responsibility for my life, was waking up from victimhood, right? And because at that point I was fully out in victim consciousness. Things, I attracted these events in my life where I was getting busted up a lot and going through the windshields of a car and getting run over by cars and hit on motorcycles, right? I'm like, slow learner. And finally sitting there, broken, like Evel Knievel, busted up multiple times going, all right, this isn't fun. There's got to be something going on here.
And was there a skydiving incident there?
Oh,
too?
yeah, there's skydiving.
When I heard that one, we heard about that when it happened. I was just like, oh my God.
Yeah. Well, and again, the beauty of that, for when I share with my teaching when I'm clients is to help people remember, like even that. So it's not only is it not the other people like, oh, you got hurt in skydiving. No, I didn't. I used skydiving as a tool to help me heal, right? That was an act that I did break my spine, but it was only because I wasn't getting to that part to open up my heart and heal more. Because that's actually where I broke my spine, was right where my heart is. And it was that gift of going, hey, how about now? Do you have time now to lay down for 5.5 weeks so we can have a conversation, right? How about now? No, I don't have time for that. How about now? Well, we're going to arrange it for you.
Yeah, I think the creator gives us, taps on the shoulder and, hey, listen. And then eventually he might give us a 2x4 to get our attention. We did the same thing, when COVID came along and, we went through what it hit the first of 2020 really hard here, first time, but for us, it was an opportunity for me to look at fear and, to really work through that process. And I mean, the first time we got it, it was like 10 full days of really yuck, but it was an opportunity. And we both of us came out the other side healthier and better. And
we
saw some areas in our life that had been issues before that now were not an issue, and so it was really using what would be called an accident or a disease or whatever, and using it for your opportunity to heal internally.
Powerful.
Right. So that's the beauty for me, and I know it's a fundamental part of your work, is reminding people that life happens for us and not to us.
Right.
Yeah.
But
you make a point. Oh, excuse me.
Go.
Well, I was just going to say, you're making the point of, am I ready to lay down for 5 minutes and listen? We did a workshop in a high security prison in Ionia, Michigan, back a couple of years ago. And this is a facility where they bring all of the worst offenders from the state of Michigan and put them in one old Civil War facility. These guys, it's a men's prisons. These guys are in there for 25 years to life. So we did a couple of weeks of workshops. The warden of the prison actually came to the workshops, and he just got it, and he was there to really support these prisoners. So one of our teachers up there went in and did a series, a support group on forgiveness with the group. And then a course we have created called Laws of Living was originally designed for the prison system. So he was going in to teach Laws of Living, and he did an 8-week series. And there's always been a tradition since Laws of Living was created 40 years ago. There's been a tradition that the inmates that did it had to pay for it. Well, these guys are in there for 25 years to life. They might work in the commissary for a couple hours, and we still have slavery in America. Prisons, it's legal to do slavery. A lot of big businesses are really slavers today. Still, it had not been outlawed, although there are more and more states doing that. In any event, they might get 25 cents an hour for working 4 hours a day, so they can't pay for it. So we set it up so that they had to do 5 worksheets a day over the period of the 8 weeks, and that was their ticket into Laws of Living.
Nice.
The day the course started, every man showed up and had exactly the same excuse for not having the 5 worksheets a day. Now, these are guys that are in their cells, unless they're, working in the commissary for a couple hours or, whatever. They're in their cells 23 out of 24 hours, 7 days a week.
They
And
didn't,
guess
they didn't
what
have
their
time to do the
reason?
worksheets.
Exactly.
Have time. They were too busy. So there's a second point. You said don't roll over that first 5 minutes. Be with this one, everybody. I'll tell you that after 50 years of working with people with this work and handing it to people, this worksheet process is free, and people get so excited about it. But when they start to confront what's hidden in them, and these are multi-generational patterns that create or contain so much trauma that most people turn away, and busyness is the first drug they use. Hostility is the next one. Hostility is the next one. It's, people talk about hostility as an emotion. My offering is hostility is not an emotion. It's an internally produced chemical anesthetic that keeps us from dealing and feeling our pain.
Nice.
And when you start to apply forgiveness, the first thing that goes is the hostility.
Nice.
And then you start to drop into deeper and deeper and deeper. If you go back to Yeshua 2,000 years ago, he says, take care of the heart, for out of it are the issues in life. He doesn't say, take care of the other guy. The heart in that language would be what we would today call the unconscious. Take care what is unconscious in you, because that's where the energetic accumulation is from generations and generations of dissociation and suppression. And the more we suppress something, the more power we put into it, the higher the amplitude is of the energetic wave that radiates out to us, that resonates and pulls somebody into play with us. We're like gravity. Whatever we hold creates a gravitational pull that pulls somebody in to do that to me. And of course, if I play the game of, this isn't mine, they made me, I'm in denial, my mind creates a picture of how they're the problem. And you've got to collapse that picture.
What we resist persists, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. This is going to be a 9-week series, by the way, because
it might be a 2-year series, Lou. Whatever it takes. Whatever it takes, we're here for it.
Let's unpack that. So what I would ask and request is for the listening audience, because I love and fully resonate with the multi-generational. So it's not genetic as it is energetic. It's stored genetic, but it's not genetic from the place of the traditional part of, I have this stuff and I'm trapped in forever and I'm screwed, right?
Oh, yeah,
versus
absolutely.
It's just coded in the memory cells. And so first of all, describe what that is so people get a different paradigm of it. And then because of the power of the work, to unplug from and heal the multi-generational traumas that are stored in our own system that we keep playing out because we don't know we're playing it out.
Right.
Can I jump in there first, Michael?
Please.
Say again.
So first of all, the first thing that popped in my mind is an example that I give sometimes of, like, there's wiring that goes from the switch on the wall over here up to the fan. And so the potential for the fan to come on and the lights to come on is there. But I have to flip the switch to turn it on. We all have the potential for anything and everything within us, genetically, whatever. But it's up to us to flip the switch on or off. And so, that was the first thing that I thought of. Have been writing a book for several years now. I'll get it finished one of these days. And it's called Healing the Generations, One Breath at a Time. And it came to me, we do a process called still point breathing. And during a breath session, it was, if you asked me if I believe in past lives, I would say no, but it felt like it was me. And I was a Native American child and had been captured by white men, and the abuse and everything that went on through my life. And when I came out of that breath session, like, I had physical pain, my hips, actually, I think one of the first times that I came to you was right after that, because you had some Native American things above the table that I laid on that you were working on me. And it was like, whoa, wait a minute. But anyway, so a book is coming out of that experience. But there are things that are passed on, just like the color of our eyes and the color of our skin, that hasn't been dealt with before, that is genetically in there. And it only comes up when you're vital enough to deal with it. So it's not like, oh my God, all these things that my great grandmother and grandfather did and all this, I'm going to have to deal with it. Not until you're vital enough. And then it'll come up one at a time. And when it's in your face, that's what you work on. That's what you deal with as you move through life.
And we've got a whole lot more choice than the world has taught us. We're
Mm.
now understanding epigenetics. As Jeannie said, the light switch is there. And when we decide to, say, for instance, eat the SAD diet, standard American diet, put away a fifth of scotch, that is an environmental signal that flips a switch that brings into play things of a disintegrative nature.
Mm.
One of the foundations of my work comes out of Einstein's mouth, and here's what he says. On such things as matter, we have been all wrong. What we have heretofore called matter is energy, energies whose vibrations have been so lowered as to be perceptible to the senses. There is no matter. As you say, Lou, we live in an energetic world, not a material world. And literally, as an energy system, every experience that each of us goes through enters us as an energy and is stored holographically. My take is in every cell in the structure, including the sperm and the egg. So when a child is conceived, they literally have all of the energetic patterns of both of their parents. And those energies are there as potentials. And there's certain behaviors that if we engage in them, throw the switch for the drama and trauma life to be lived out. And there are other behaviors that throw the switch for aliveness and joy and creativity, and the human life that we're designed for comes through. And we have choices about that. And the challenge is, to me, that the behaviors that throw the switch for destruction in the human form make a lot of money in the world.
Yo.
So
Yeah.
they get promoted. I mean, this year, we got a new year going. 3.3 million people in the world are going to die because of alcohol. 3.3 million people. That's a big money business. And most people have a special cabinet in their homes where they keep a fluid designed for celebration. When their favorite people and their family and their friends come over, they reserve the fluids in that cabinet to serve them so everybody will have fun. And the epigenetic switch is thrown for, the teenager died from alcohol poisoning after that party. The fights that broke out when people went into a stupor because the inhibitors in their brain were shut off by alcohol. But it's promoted as and approved by the whole culture because there's a lot of money in it. But it's a tragedy that it's even presented in our world as an option. It's a tragedy. And so to start to understand those switches and the power we have to make choices to bring forward those genetic propensities or to bring forward something else, and to me, removing the energetic patterns, genetically and otherwise, that are based in hostility and fear, make a space in this form for human life to show up. And hate and fear and rage and guilt are all corrupt datas that inhibit human life. Human life, now, many people say, well, Michael, what is human life? Well, have you ever held a newborn? Have you ever held a newborn, Lou?
Many times, sir.
So go back to one of those times, if you would, and hold, this is a question Jeannie usually asks in the workshop. Go back and hold that newborn for a second again and tap into the essence of the newborn. What word would you use to describe, and I'll invite everybody who listens to this podcast, what word you use to describe that newborn's essence?
Love and pure potential.
Yeah. So that's a question Jeannie and I have asked of tens of thousands of people all over the globe in every culture that we've been in, which is many over the years. And everybody's answer is always the same. It's always some variation on the theme of love. For me, that documents that we are love. That's it. That's the essence of the human being. But we have this generational body-mind unit that's bought into thought disorders based in insanity. Messages that come from what we identify as a power person that we tend to buy into, and we literally generate a whole self out of that misinformation that we think we are. This is a self, if you go back to Yeshua 2,000 years ago, he says, in order for you to live, you've got to die. And And that doesn't mean, go put a bullet in your head. It means that the false self, based in corrupt data, anything to do with hostility and fear, blocks the ability to incarnate in this world, in our form, as the created essence of love that we are. We live in a culture, we all came in exactly the same way, every one of us. And our culture has refined the skill of slapping that out of us, that experience, and then sending us out the door with a message that says, go find somebody to love you, go find somebody to love. And we start a totally, completely false search, thinking that it's something we're going to find out there, when what we need to do is collapse all of the lies of our power person, all of the messages based in hostility and fear that the world has given us, all the addictions that keep us locked in that place, and face and remove what has been building generationally in our structures for thousands of years.
Mm.
And by removing those corrupt energetic patterns, anything based in hostility or fear, you know that your mind is generating a construct that's false. Removing those things creates a space where active present love enters form and expresses in the world.
What a beautiful, thank you. What a masterful job this institutionalized process has done to deviate sentient beings from their true path and continue living into a distorted lie that causes pain and suffering, right? It's incredible.
It's
Absolutely
satanic.
Incredible. It is.
Now, before we buy into the Greek idea, like the Greek idea of forgiveness is totally off base, it's the same about Satan. In Aramaic, Satan is a very important concept to understand. And in that word, when it was spoken in Aramaic 2,000 years ago, the word means the resistor, one who misleads. Most of the world is trapped in Satan. People are in a traumatic experience generated by their own minds, their own constructs and perceptions. And you say, well, gee, I've known you for 30 years and I've watched you go through that again and again. Did you ever think that maybe that's yours? And what do? Oh, no, wait a minute, wait. And then, so they're in resistance to the truth. And then they got a whole story to tell you about it's caused by them. It's about somebody else. The resistor, one who misleads. That's somebody who's trapped in Satan. Got nothing to do with the dude with the red suited tail and a pitchfork that the Greeks made up in order to distract us from understanding the truth of how this whole thing works. So what needs to be overcome?
Yeah.
The resistance and the lies, the hostility and fear-based constructs of our minds that totally and completely lead us off into a trail that reinforces itself and keeps us in that posture.
So on that note, sharing for the listening audience, at some point I'm sure that they've heard this before, yet for those who maybe haven't, my own background on this exact story. So growing up in a family of 9 in a traditional flow with this filter running through the entire family, as I woke up, what I was getting from my blood family was, you've been brainwashed. And when it first came at me, I was in that place of defensiveness, like, no. And then I finally set it in, like, you know what? I've actually taken my brain out and scrubbed it clean from all of the filth, the misinformation that was put in there to keep me thinking everything, the uselessness and the this and the that and the blame and the victimhood. And so after I continue to scrub it, to that awakening of going, oh my goodness, no. I'm responsible for everything that happens in my life because of the patterns that I run, especially the ones that I'm not paying attention that I'm running because they're in the unconscious. But it's my job to go there and pay attention to them. And as you both teach us, well, how do I know what that is? Just take a look at what I've created in my life.
Look
right?
at the fruit.
Yeshua said, look at the fruit you produce.
100%.
And that's a great word to use, scrubbing. That's exactly what forgiveness is. In the first century Aramaic, forgiveness is, I've spent 50 years plus searching for the answers. And the only place I have found a way to consistently and persistently scrub the mind of what doesn't belong in it was out of the mouth of Yeshua 2,000 years ago when he instructed how to forgive. And then that tool was almost instantly disappeared. If we equate the word forgive with removal, now we're talking about forgiveness. And scrubbing is another great word for how do I go in here? What do I find? How do I take care of my unconscious? Because that's where my next trauma is going to come from. How do I drop into it and remove it rather than waiting for the universe to respond to the gravitational pull of that trauma in me and play it out with me again? I can directly, through choice, go inside myself, find that and remove it, be done with it. And that creative process that produces trauma is gone when I scrub my mind of it. As long as it's there, it's all going to show up in this construct. You know, we live in a world, another con of the world is that I open my eyes and I see what's going on out there. Now, the biggest lie that's ever been told, well, maybe not the biggest, but one of the biggest, is that you can see something through your eyes. Energetic, you know, my background's electronics with a side study in physics. And speaking in terms of physics, the eye is a literal antenna that brings light energy in. You can't see out through an antenna. You can't pull the wires off the back of your TV and look and see what's happening in the neighborhood through the antenna on the roof. That's silly. And you can no more see out through your eyes than fly in the air. Information comes in, it's a one-way valve. The information that comes in resonates content genetically and otherwise, and then the mind produces literally a construct called the world you see. We've been tricked into believing that what we see through our eyes, and we don't. We see it with our brain.
But that's reality, Michael. Everything I see, I can prove
That's
it.
exactly what it is. It's reality, and it's a replacement for actuality. Everybody lives in their own reality, totally, completely, 100%. There's an interesting quote, you know, this is something we've been teaching for years. There's an interesting quote that comes from the CIA on this topic. They did research on, and I'm just looking at my phone right now to find the quote. They did research on, they've got a book you can download on their website. We actually copied it to ours because they kept moving the link, called The Study of Human Intelligence. And there's a chapter in it on perception. And here's the conclusion after spending who knows how many millions of dollars. Here's the conclusion that the CIA came to. You can download this from their site or from ours. Perception is demonstrably an active rather than a passive process. It constructs rather than records reality. Perception is a process of inference in which people construct their own version of reality on the basis of information provided by the five senses. So every person, you know, there's some Harvard research that says in the time frame where 10,000 brain cells are firing, there are 10,000 measurable units of electrical activity going on. The max amount of data that goes into the construct of the mind is 9 bits. We see 9 bits out of 10,000 brain cells firing. And it's been estimated that in that same time frame, the actuality contains perhaps 20 trillion bits of information. It's interesting. Our granddaughter is 4, and she took a great interest in anatomy and physiology when she was just under 3. She would sit and watch. I actually had a set of anatomy cards that I showed her one day. Jeannie and I showed her, and she sat with those cards. This was just before she turned 3, for over an hour, going through them, asking questions about everything about the body. And now, and since then, she'll sit 45 minutes at a crack and do it 2 or 3 of them in a row, watching anatomy and physiology videos. So we got her a
skeleton.
We call him Mr. Skinny. You can take the muscles off and all the organs out. She loves to play with it, and she loves to do Play-Doh copies of the body parts. She can tell you where the pancreas is and where the adrenals go, and what the diaphragm is. She's 4. She can tell you all that. So she likes to use Play-Doh to make the parts. So a couple months ago, she's making some body parts. She says, Papa, I want to watch that body video. So we turn on the TV and we get the video she wants to watch. And it's a cartoon outline of a human form and all the organs in it. And the organs kind of fall out on the ground in order of size. And then each organ sings what it does, what its part is. So the eyes come up and they sing, I am your eyes, I am your eyes, I see the world around you. Arya looks at me and says, Papa, they don't understand, do they? We see with our brain, not with our eyes. At 4, she got that. And I'd never said that to her. Now, the first year of her life, our radio show's 5 days a week, and it happened to be at her nap time. So I would be laying down doing the radio show with her on my shoulder, sound asleep, and doing the radio show through my headset. That was how I did my radio show for the first year of her life, or maybe a little better than a year. But she just came up with that totally on her own. We see with our brain, not with our eyes. And that's exactly what neuroscience is telling us. It's been proven. There's no question about it. And then, of course, the CIA to say it, that's pretty profound that they're actually starting to expose the truth to the world.
Well, there's the beauty of that, right? So listening to the audience, that piece there where here's the CIA, right? This is an agency of the U.S. government, spends our tax dollars to prove indeed this higher level of this truth. Yet where is that then turned around and shared with the general population to support them, to understand? No, right?
Anybody can download it for free from their site, though. Yeah. It is there.
That's why I wrote it down. So I will definitely be doing that. Yeah,
it's actually the quote and the link to it is in the article I just sent you to attach to this video.
I'll just put it in the show notes, and everybody will have access to it.
Yeah.
There's also a TED Talk with a gentleman named Anil Seth, Anilseth.
It's in the article.
That the brain hallucinates our reality, that we make it up. So
we literally create a whole world detailed. And again, to recognize that what our eyes show us is a hologram, and we think it's life, and we tend to base our lives on it. That's what the culture teaches us. And the truth is, there's no life in the hologram. All it is a hologram generated out of the past. And when you realize that that's not meant to direct your life, then you start to remove what's in it, and the hologram changes.
And so I was just sharing, sorry for the interruption. So for the listening audience is, so not only are we not seeing what's out there, right? We don't see the way the world is, we see the way we are. And that's distorted with all the other components that come with us. So my past experiences, my perception of those past experiences, the meaning that I gave those experiences, right? And it's all yet because it seems, there's the trick. It seems real, therefore that's how the world is. But it's not. It's just how I am, or it's just how you are, right? And that's, if you're new to that process, that's a little unnerving to go, what? Because now it starts to pull away the fabric of how we were conditioned to, quote unquote, see the world, show up in the world, be with the world, and interact with the world. Right. But what we're offering right now is freedom, right? Is to unplug from that conditioning and start to see clearly, maybe for the first time, or at least again. Yeah. So on something Michael shared earlier on, I just want to, because some people, whatever, they do or don't. Some people, when they hear me share and they're going, a little conspiracy, I'm like, hold on a second, time out. It's just follow the money, right? So I share this little thing so they can get it, which is, what's the number one money-making industry in the world, right? And they'll say something. I'm like, no, it's actually arms sale, right? Like war, right? So tanks,
arms, pharmaceuticals.
Right. You guys know this. So how does that industry survive, right? Peacetime or wartime? Of course, wartime. That's how the industry works, right? So same thing. What's the next one? So pharmaceuticals. Well, how does that industry happen with healthy society or quote unquote a sick society? It needs ill people, right? So it's a completely money-driven process. And that's why everything of the disempowerment, to keep reminding people how weak and broken and how incapable we are of healing and right. And so,
That's the game.
yeah,
It's where the money is.
that's
Yeah.
it. So, ladies and gentlemen, when you constantly pay attention to, when you keep letting, back to what Jeannie and Michael teaches, the mind energy, when you consistently let something else program your system versus you choosing what you allow in, right? So if you sit in front of the boob tube or the tradition, anything, radio stations, TV station, whatever it is, and you're allowing their information to keep coming in, it is programming you in the way that they want you to function and behave.
And you're adding your energy to it, so you're amplifying what it is that you're watching.
Exactly. The ancients, repeatedly said, transcend. And that's been made up as you'll float off in space somewhere. No, put an end to the state of trance. Get out of hypnosis is what they were saying.
Nice.
And we've been hypnotized by the world. And in particular, in the field of healing and wholeness, when I hear what you have gone through with your form, and the fact that you're sitting here talking and you get up and you can still walk is pretty amazing. And I could just about bet that you didn't do that through drugs. And,
Zero.
For me, I mean, as a naturopath, my definition of a drug is a disease disguised as a cure. If you look at the insert in the package, you'll notice there's a whole list of what they call side effects. Excuse me, there are no side effects to drugs. They cause diseases. Now, they may, and they can be useful, they may actually shut down a set of symptoms so you go, I feel better, but what's the cost? What happens? That energy that's been shut down is still in the system. Sooner or later, it's going to have to be dealt with. And then all of the diseases that come along with it, and they say, well, yeah, but only some people. No, everybody gets diseases from the use of drugs. Some people are more profoundly visible than others, but everybody is affected by the energetic patterns that they bring into their structures. And so, again, not saying there isn't a place for that, but when we lay drugs, let me back up a second. Drugs are basically treatment. If we do just treatment, then we can feel better, but there's no healing in treatment. What we need to do is lay healing alongside of treatment if we need treatment. And ultimately, I think we have to become our own healthcare providers to know where to go for the support for the energetic healing that we need. And the core of every disease is there's an energy in the system that is destroying the system. Forgiveness is about addressing, accessing, and removing those energetic patterns. For me, that's why they called Yeshua the great physician. He knew the core tool and presented it. And almost instantly when it showed up, it was disappeared, and it became a Greek idea of letting other people off the hook because my mind is generating this. If Yeshua sat in most places today where they ostensibly talk about his work, he'd say, that's all Greek to me. And we need to wake up from it.
Physician, heal thyself. Ladies and gentlemen, again, part of the the motivation from to keep us disempowered and ignorant, as Michael was just sharing and Jeannie was just sharing, even the power of the use of words, right? It's so profound. And again, unfortunately, they're masters of the process in marketing, and in marketing any form or fashion, from finances to politics to education to religion, and definitely to quote unquote healthcare. That simple place of, well, it's a side effect. And Michael just said, there's no such thing. Open up a physics book. There's no law of cause, effect, and side effect. There's absolutely no law in the universe. There's cause and effect, period. So if you ingest something,
good thought.
And it was meant to, turn your hair purple, but your liver fell out. Oh, well, that was a side effect. No, that's a direct effect. It might be an undesired effect, but it's a direct effect. However, playing with the words, then we start to believe, oh, no, it was just a side effect. And as long as we keep allowing these types of mental distortions, then we keep trapped in the story.
Yeah. And you go back to Yeshua, reinforcing what you just said, and he talks about words, and he says the power of life and death is in our words. Words are literally frequencies. I mean, what we do with this voice box is a vibration, as Einstein said. vibrations so low as to be perceptible to the senses, this thing introduces frequencies into this form that become integrated into this form. And they're of two qualities. One of them is integrative, will build the system up. One is disintegrative, will tear the system down. Hostility and fear are always disintegrative energies. Now, the ego tries to make up stories about, well, yeah, but my rage helps me take action. So, well, okay, your rage helps you take action, but what do you suppose would happen if you're taking that action out of a connected space of love? Would it perhaps be 10,000 times more powerful? I mean, I've got a dump truck coming. We're getting a dump truck that's going to come and unload some soil here. I can go unload it with a teaspoon. And 2 years from now, I'll have the dump truck unloaded. I mean, I can do that. And that would be like saying I use hostility to make me take action, where we're designed to function out of the active presence of love, and our words are key in that whole process.
That makes me think of, I use an example. I do workshops with women mostly, but one of the examples I always use is I was raised on a farm part of the time. And back then, my grandfather used horses to pull the plow, and they put blinders on them. And that was so that it would follow direction and go straight and do a straight row. If it didn't have those blinders, then it could see the, filly over here or the hay over there or whatever, and it would do its own thing. And I said, it's hostility and fear is like those blinders on the horse. We just, it keeps us just going straight ahead and doing what we're told to do to go, where we're supposed to go and all this. And we don't see the potential outside of us. And the answer to every question that we ever have is there. I mean, we have 360-degree vision, but we've got these blinders on so we don't see it. And the answer to our so-called problem might be right beside of us. And we can't see it because we've got the hostility and fear going and keeping us from seeing the whole truth.
Great point, Sweetie. That's it, exactly.
Yeah, right. So that beautiful, I've heard it in so many different, the parable story, whatever. So some mean people discovered the source of true potential for humanity. And right, there was 3 of them. They said, hey, we got to hide these from these people, because if they get this, we're going to be out of business. And the first one says, okay, I know, we're going to hide it on top of the highest mountain. Right. And you're like, no, that's a good idea. But eventually they're going to learn how to climb up there, and they're going to get it, and they're going to find it, and we're going to be out of business. And the other one says, oh, we'll take it to the deepest part of the sea. Right. Well, and they're like, no. So they're going to invent a submarine, and they'll eventually find it. We're going to be out of business. We got to put it someplace they'll never, ever look, and they'll never find it. So they thought and they thought and they thought. And then the third one goes, just put it right inside of them. They'll never look there. Right.
Yeah.
And right, how true that is. So again, ladies and gentlemen, when you listen, this is, if I went back 45 years ago and I was I wouldn't be listening to this podcast because I wasn't ready to hear what it was saying. But if I did, somebody plopped me down, just that place of like looking within, like, first of all, what does that mean? Right. So let me start from here. When we incarnate, we enter form as a baby. We're crawling around and we're exploring our world. We go out into our senses, right? So I pick up the marker that I found on the floor and I bang it so I can hear it. And when I'm holding it, I can feel it. And I bring it up to my mouth so I can taste it and touch it and smell it. And once I've encoded that, boom, there goes the marker, and I call to the next thing, right? I grab the cat and I lick it and bite it and do whatever I need to do to record this thing. And then I grab the chair and then I walk over and I'm recording my environment. And as I keep doing that over and over 24/7, I start to live out in my senses. And I believe that that's where the world exists. And I forget to turn around and come back home.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's the greatest disconnect, is we've forgotten that that's just all that is strictly perception anyways. So the work is coming back home. How do we get inside to do the work, right? How do I get inside to really remember and then do the work so I can then so in 2 weeks, I have an event called Life by Design. And a core part of that work is to help people pop, right? To give them that perspective of, so even as, like I did, as I awaken, then I'm like, okay, and now I'm aware. But now I'm trying to make changes still within the paradigm that made the mess in the first place, which is, why is this happening to me again, right? Michael's fundamental work. And now I'm wondering why things aren't changing, even though I'm aware. And that's really frustrating. Or at least it was for me. So not until we really pop out of the quote unquote matrix to go, oh, wow, now I have a clean slate to make true choices from,
Right.
not trying to make them from within the confused matrix in the first place.
It makes me
Great
think
explanation.
of,
I love that thing of how we extend it out into the senses. Is that copyrighted? Can I use that?
It's copyrighted now, but you can use it. It's a 5% royalty.
That's a great way to say it. So I don't know just how much time we've got left, but I'm wondering, where you want to go from here. One of my thoughts is that it would be cool perhaps to deliver a shock to people and describe exactly how forgiveness works and what you need to do to carry actual forgiveness out. That would be one direction, but I'm open to your thoughts on that.
First of all, that sounds great. Thank you for even pulling me down. So I just looked at the clock to honor everybody's listening time. Why don't we do that? So as Michael and Ginny bring us into close with this, how do we actually implement forgiveness into our life? We'll use that as a close for this episode, and we will definitely be playing some more. They might not know this yet, but I'm gonna bug them because now they're close enough where I can actually bang on their door.
We're happy to do this anytime.
Yeah.
And so, ladies and gentlemen, also listening, so in the show notes, right, we'll have links to their site, to their work. It's filled with just buku amounts of content right there for their entire purpose is to get this information into the hearts and minds and souls of everybody on the planet. And that's not just a concept, it's real. I mean, once you land on the site, whyagain.org, and again, I'll have all these as hyperlinked in the show notes. Right away, you'll see there's Michael's book, free for download. There's tons of videos, like free to watch and access right there. The radio show, there's tons of content that you can absorb, and they also have plenty of to dive into further. DVDs and CDs to be able to consume streaming content and their live courses. Yep. So there's many ways to enter the world and keep growing and learning. And there's plenty of resources that they freely give out to make sure it gets into the heart and soul and minds of as many inhabitants on this planet to keep healing the entire spectrum. So, yes. Yeah, thank you. So please take it away. How do we do this thing?
Yeah. Well, probably out of this conversation are going to come a lot of questions, and your workshops are addressing those questions. And it takes a village. It takes all of us to get this whole picture together and workable for people. But questions will come out of it. And one of the things that we do is 5 days a week, we have a radio show from 1 till 2 o'clock Eastern time. And it's an internet show. People can access it on the internet, but most people, because they've got free long distance, listen to the show on the phone. So people can call in from 1 till 2 o'clock Eastern time, 5 days a week, and ask questions. If you dial 563-999-3581, you'll be listening to the show. And then if people just push 1 on their phone, it raises a hand. Jeannie runs the control panel. She'll introduce them, and the three of us will be having a conversation. So that's available for questions on this and refinements. And of course, the app explains the whole process or gives you the facility to use the tools. And on every page of the app that Jeannie has so geniusly designed, there's a button you can push. If you're at step 3 in the worksheet, you go, I don't understand this. Type us a question, hit the button, it'll send right from the app. We'll get it. We'll answer it on the radio show, and Jeannie will send back an email that says, here's a link to the radio show where you answered your question. So we're here to support as much as possible. And, Jeannie's got the website up now, up over 20,000 pages. So there's all kinds of material there. But as far as how the forgiveness process is done, it's a shock to the mind. And the reason it's a shock is because we've got it backward. Again, we think this picture is out there and it's not. And so a starting point to recognize how forgiveness is done is, we'll ask everybody, notice that unless you're just a generally miserable person, the only time you point any form of upset, any form of hostility at anyone, including yourself, is if that individual violates a goal that you have for them. Notice that, if you're a reasonable person, you're pretty happy with everybody until they're not doing what you want them to do. You've got a goal for them. And this is the key way into first century Aramaic forgiveness. In the Aramaic language, the word forgive is shabag or shabak, And it literally translates, I mean, they've translated it as forgiveness, but it literally translates to cancel. So the instruction to forgive is the instruction to cancel. Now, if I'm building a construct, a perceptual construct that you're the problem in my life, if I cancel you, that's murder. Not a good place to go. If I'm building construct about myself, canceling myself, suicide, let's leave that one out. But in any given circumstance where I have a disturbance or upset, I'm always in charge of the goal that I hold. And I can always get rid of it if I choose to. And what we need to do in order to forgive is learn how to cancel our goals. And the reason for that, and again, we've only got a few minutes, so this is going to be the short form. It's usually a 3-hour workshop. In the notes that I sent you, there's a link to it, that 3-hour workshop. People can watch free anytime they want. So this Harvard research we talked about, 10,000 brain cells are fired. There are 10,000 measurable units of electrical activity going off in the brain, and perception is constructed out of 9 bits of data. Now, obviously, if that's true, and it's research has been around for over a half a century, and it's the most quoted research in psychological history. It's pretty solid. And when you realize that your perception is constructed out of 9 bits of information, something must have selected which 9 bits of information it was going to use out of the 10,000 firing or the 20 trillion potentially available. The selector, the driver for the process of perception is your goals. Whenever one has pained perception, pain moving in their mind or their awareness, they also have pain and trauma energy moving in their physiology. You can't separate them. I have a coin here. And if you look on one side of the coin, you'll see there's an Indian head. You look on the other side of the coin and there's a buffalo. Now we look at the coin and we say, well, there's a head and a tail. Is there really a head and a tail, or is that just perception? Can I take the head off of that coin and leave just the tail? No, I can't. It is one singular event seen from 2 different perspectives, but it's one event. This body, mind, nervous system is exactly the same. It's one event. We think there's a mind, and the church was involved and science was involved in doing this back the 1600s. They separated it out like they're 2 different things. But the mind is like looking at the Indian on the coin. That's one perspective of this singular event, and the body is a perspective of that singular event. But they're one and the same, and you can't separate them. What you do in your mind also happens in your body. And so if perception is pained, tissue is in a disease state. And what needs to happen is that dis-ease energy, that disintegrative energy, needs to be removed. To be removed, it has to be accessed directly. If I have an old trauma that I've been through 87 different times with 42 different people, that means I've had a goal, somebody's violated, that old trauma has come up, and I've made my perception of them out of that trauma, and I say, they're the problem in my life. But the pain, the trauma is going on in my physiology. What I need to do is to be able to collapse that perception. And by collapsing and cleaning up perception, we improve the quality of perception. Poor quality perception is any perception based in any form of hostility or fear. Accurate perception is always based and fueled by active present love. And so if we're in poor quality perception, we're in pain. That means we're in a physical, in the realm where we believe in physical, that means we're in a physical disease. I need to get rid of or collapse that construct of my mind. How do I do it? Well, there's only one place I found the technology. It was put forward 2,000 years ago by this man, Yin Yesha, and he said you have to shebag. You have to cancel the goal that drives that process. And when you cancel the goal, that construct that represents your pained physiology as some sort of emotional trauma or mental pain, that construct collapses. When it collapses in on itself, and it creates an opening into the unconscious. Now You know, Carl Jung says that ultimately what we need to do is to make the unconscious conscious. How do we do that? Every time your structure is presenting pained constructs, if you look at the goal you're holding for your object of attention, self or others, and you cancel it, that construct collapses. When it collapses, it gives you access to the underlying hidden part of the mind. When that part comes forward directly, rather than being projected into your brain's image of someone else, whoever you're thinking is the problem in your life, when that comes forward directly and love is present in your mind, there's a transmutation of energy. The toxic dis-ease energy is dissolved in an instant. And that's forgiveness, a la first century Aramaic Yeshua. Now, when you, in our culture, see how illogical and irrational and stupid that is, I've got this perfectly good goal. I just wanted my brother to cherish me and honor me. Why would I cancel the goal for my brother to cherish me and honor me? What's wrong with that goal, Michael? Why would I cancel it? I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the goal. That's a perfectly wonderful goal. Everybody should have that for everybody all the time. The problem is, if I load that driver in my mind, it accesses my trauma. And now I build a traumatic perception of my brother. But the trauma that I'm experiencing is my own. It's got nothing to do with my brother. Never forgive your brother. Never forgive another. But if you're in pain or trauma, look for the goal that's driving the construct of your mind at the moment, cancel it, and that thing collapses. You know, there's an image that I like to put out. The event wasn't a very happy event. It's not one that, we want to play a lot with, but it's a good visual for forgiveness. Everybody saw the 9/11 towers go down. You know, a multi-story building drops free fall speed into its own footprint. When you cancel a goal, pain perception drops free fall into its own footprint. Now you've got access to what underlies it. What maybe happened to great, 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 great grandma 2,000 years ago. And when I access that energetic imprint and I bring it forward in the presence of love, it dissolves. Another link that's in the notes that I sent you is a woman who was doing our codependence to interdependence intensive. And she was having heart problems. She was in her 70s having heart problems. And so her assignment in the codependence workshop was to inquire about the condition of the hearts of her ancestors. And she ends up in a full-blown processing conversation with her great-great-grandfather. And it's just awesome to watch. I was in tears when it happened in the intensive. The clip that's in there was actually in our radio show. She called into the radio show to share it. I was in tears again. It's just so powerful to recognize that when we develop the skill of, and to use your analogy, we come out of our senses and we start to explore inside and develop the skill of being able to access those neuropeptides that hold our trauma and remove them from the cell. Forgiveness is just an awesome process and changes everything.
Wow. Thank you for that. And thank you both for the work that you've been doing for decades and decades and decades. I want to thank you guys immensely on behalf of humanity for the decades of service of this this act of love that you have been sharing with millions of people around the planet and still do to this day. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you how you've impacted me and what you've have been and continue to do on behalf of all of us and the planet. There was one of my teachers had me play with words, and as you were speaking, Michael, I had never seen it like this before. So cancel, right? The gift of the Aramaic, cancel ends in an L and cancer ends in an R. Same, right? So cancel, love, L, and cancer, R, repeating, right? We keep repeating the same story in the traumas. And the cancers, however we want to look at cancer, but that thing that eats us up, period, right?
Yeah.
The anger, the hostility, right? That eats us up. Yes, it turns pathological, but it's just the virus of the mind.
Right.
And wow, right? And how often it's just too often, we talk about love, but are we really like energetically bathing in the essence of what it means, not just the 4-letter word, right?
The essence of what we are.
Yeah.
And deep appreciation, Lou, for the way
Yes,
that your
thank you.
hands and heart has touched us. And your inquiry, you just opened some really nice pieces for me today. I'm definitely going to use that thing of extending out into the senses. That's such a great graphic picture of how we lose awareness of ourselves. And so thank you for that too.
Honor and
The
privilege.
work that you've done for so many decades and keep bringing it forward. And, together we're changing the game. So
Yeah.
nice work, my friend.
The light always wins, right? Yeah. Excellent. So,
bends toward justice.
yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, please tap into the world, right? At the end of in the show notes, but underneath this episode, you'll see all the hyperlinks. For those that are just listening at the moment, you can go to their site, whyagain.org, WHYAGAIN.org. And from there, you'll be able to access the rest of their realm. And please tap in. And as they just shared, they've got the radio show where you can call in and they're going to serve you live right there.
5 days a week.
And I just discovered before we went live, Jeannie helped create this amazing app. I'm like, how do you do that?
She did create it.
Yeah, and so there'll be access to how to get a hold, and the app is free, but it's a way to also enter the world and just keep being served to learn, grow, and evolve in this process. Yeah,
cool.
So thank you both so much for your time.
Thank you.
And ladies and
honored
gentlemen,
and delighted, my friend. Blessings. I'll look forward to the next one.
100%.
See where it goes. All right.
And so, ladies and gentlemen, until the next episode, have a beautiful day. Thank you for tuning in to the TAO-Living Podcast, The Art of Living. Now go to loucorleto.com, LOUCORLETO.com, to receive your free training, the operator's manual for your vehicle. See, when you buy a phone, you get a manual. When you buy a car, you get a manual. When you entered your body, no manual. Let me teach you how it's really designed to work. Also, help me help others and share this podcast far and wide. And subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Until next time, abundant blessings.